put her handkerchief back in her pocket, and persisted in turning the conversation on Midwinter's walking tour. "It is bad enough to be a burden on you," she said, gently pressing on his arm as she spoke. "I mustn't distress you as well. Tell me, where have you been, and what have you seen? Interest me in your journey. Help me to escape from myself." They reached the modest little lodging in the miserable little suburb. Miss Gwilt sighed and removed her glove before she took Midwinter's hand. "I have taken refuge here," she said simply. "It is clean and quiet. I am too poor to want or expect more. We must say good-bye, I suppose, unless—" She hesitated modestly, and satisfied herself by a quick look around that they were unobserved. "Unless you would like to come in and rest a little. I feel so gratefully toward you, Mr. Midwinter. Is there any harm, do you think, in my offering you a cup of tea?" The magnetic influence of her touch was thrilling through him while she spoke. Change and absence, to which he had trusted to weaken her hold on him, had treacherously strengthened it instead. A man exceptionally sensitive, a man exceptionally pure in his past life, he stood hand in hand in the tempting secrecy of the night with the first woman who had exercised over him the all-absorbing influence of her sex. At his age and in his position, who could have left her? The man, with a man's temperament, doesn't live who could have left her. Midwinter went in. A stupid, sleepy lad opened the house door. Even he, being a male creature, brightened under the influence of Miss Gwilt. "The urn, John," she said kindly, "and another cup and saucer. I'll borrow your candle to light my candles upstairs, then I won't trouble you any more to-night." John was wakeful and active in an instant. "No trouble, miss," he said, with an awkward civility. Miss Gwilt took his candle with a smile. "How good people are to me!" she whispered innocently to Midwinter, as she led the way upstairs to the little drawing-room on the first floor. She lit the candles, and turning quickly on her guest, stopped him at the first attempt he made to remove the knapsack from his shoulders. "No," she said gently. "In the good old times there were occasions when the ladies unarmed their knights. I claim the privilege of unarming my knight." Her dexterous fingers intercepted his at the straps and buckles, and she had the dusty knapsack off before he could protest against her touching it. They sat down at the one little table in the room. It was very poorly furnished, but there was something of the dainty neatness of the woman who inhabited it, in the arrangement of the few poor ornaments on the chimney-piece, in the one or two prettily bound volumes on the chiffonier, in the flowers on the table, and the modest little work-basket in the window. "Women are not all coquettes," she said, as she took off her bonnet and mantilla, and laid them carefully on a chair. "I won't go on into my room and look in my glass and make myself smart. You shall take me just as I am." Her hands moved about among the tea things with a smooth, noiseless activity. Her magnificent hair flashed crimson in the candlelight as she turned her head hither and thither, searching with an easy grace for the things she wanted in the tray. Exercise had heightened the brilliancy of her complexion, and had quickened the rapid alternations of expression in her eyes, the delicious languor that stole over them when she was listening or thinking, the bright intelligence that flashed from them softly when she spoke. In the lightest words she said, in the least thing she did, there was something that gently solicited the heart of the man who sat with her. Perfectly modest in her manner, possessed to perfection of all the graceful restraints and refinements of a lady, she had all the allurements that feast the eye, all the siren invitations that seduce the sense, a subtle suggestiveness in her silence, and a sexual sorcery in her smile. "Should I be wrong," she asked, suddenly suspending the conversation which she had thus far persistently restricted to the subject of Midwinter's walking tour, "if I guessed that you have something on your mind? something which neither my tea nor my talk can charm away. Are men as curious as women? Is the something me?" Midwinter struggled against the fascination of looking at her and listening to her. "I am very anxious to hear what has happened since I have been away," he said. "But I am still more anxious, Miss Gwilt, not to distress you by speaking of a painful subject." She looked at him gratefully. "It is for your sake that I have avoided the painful subject," she said, toying with her spoon among the dregs in her empty cup. "But you will hear about it from others if you don't hear about it from me. And you want to know why you found me in that strange situation, and why you see me here. Pray remember one thing to begin with. I don't blame your friend, Mr. Armadale. I blame the people whose instrument he is." Midwinter started. "Is it possible," he began, "that Allan can be in any way answerable?" He stopped, and looked at Miss Gwilt in silent astonishment. She gently laid her hand on his. "Don't be angry with me for only telling the truth," she said. "Your friend is answerable for everything that has happened to me. Innocently answerable, Mr. Midwinter, I firmly believe. We are both victims. He is the victim of his position as the richest single man in the neighborhood, and I am the victim of Miss Milroy's determination to marry him." "Miss Milroy?" repeated Midwinter, more and more astonished. "Why, Allan himself told me—" He stopped again. "He told you that I was the object of his admiration? Poor fellow! He admires everybody. His head is almost as empty as this," said Miss Gwilt, smiling indicatively into the hollow of her cup. She dropped the spoon, sighed, and became serious again. "I am guilty of the vanity of having let him admire me," she went on penitently, "without the excuse of being able, on my side, to reciprocate even the passing interest that he felt in me. I don't undervalue his many admirable qualities, or the excellent position he can offer to his wife. But a woman's heart is not to be commanded. No, Mr. Midwinter, not even by the fortunate master of Thorpe Ambrose, who commands everything else." She looked him full in the face as she uttered that magnanimous sentiment. His eyes dropped before hers, and his dark color deepened. He had felt his heart leap in him at the declaration of her indifference to Allan. For the first time since they had known each other, his interest now stood self-revealed before him as openly adverse to the interests of his friend. "I have been guilty of the vanity of letting Mr. Armadale admire me, and I have suffered for it," resumed Miss Gwilt. "If there had been any confidence between my pupil and me, I might have easily satisfied her that she might become Mrs. Armadale, if she could, without having any rivalry to fear on my part. But Miss Milroy disliked and distrusted me from the first. She took her own jealous view, no doubt, of Mr. Armadale's thoughtless attentions to me. It was her interest to destroy the position, such as it was, that I held in his estimation, and it is quite likely her mother assisted her. Mrs. Milroy had her motive also, which I am really ashamed to mention, for wishing to drive me out of the house. Anyhow, the conspiracy has succeeded. I have been forced, with Mr. Armadale's help, to leave the major's service. Don't be angry, Mr. Midwinter. Don't form a hasty opinion. I dare say Miss Milroy has some good qualities, though I have not found them out, and I assure you again and again that I don't blame Mr. Armadale. I only blame the people whose instrument he is." "How is he their instrument? How can he be the instrument of any enemy of yours?" asked Mr. Midwinter. "Pray excuse my anxiety, Miss Gwilt. Allan's good name is as dear to me as my own." Miss Gwilt's eyes turned full on him again, and Miss Gwilt's heart abandoned itself innocently to an outburst of enthusiasm. "How I admire your earnestness!" she said. "How I like your anxiety for your friend!